Welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I'm, of course, your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 148th episode, our returning guest is Ash Burgess. You first heard Ash Burgess on episodes 16, 26, 27, 39, 58, 63, 77, 86, 91, 100, 124, 130, 136, 142, 143, and episode 82, which also featured fellow regular guest Jonathan Fowler of the podcast. Ash Burgess has a dusty degree in religious studies and an appetite for both high and low culture. She strives to celebrate the best of every season with her young children. Follow her on Instagram at Ash Burgess, all one word, and subscribe to her YouTube channel. And now on to the show. Welcome to the Rob Burgess Show, Ash Burgess.
Thank you, Rob Burgess.
We are here to talk about... You knew it first as a book.
Yes, it was a book that I attempted to read sometime this past year, and I had forgotten about it up to the point that I saw that it was a show, and I kind of vaguely recalled that it was a book, and then I couldn't remember if it was a book that I had read, just like kind of searched through and just forgotten, because it was like not, because I do that sometimes, especially with books that I get for my Kindle. I'll just read them like really quickly in just, a couple evenings, and then if they weren't particularly notable, I just will never think about them again, and then I'll kind of forget that I read them, and then, because I've done that before where I've actually gotten a book from the library, and I was excited about it, and then I was like, oh shoot, I've already read this. And that feeling comes on immediately. It's, in the first page, and like, you feel like you're experiencing a little bit of deja vu, and then you're like, oh. So anyway, I wasn't sure at first when I saw that there was a show, if it was a book that I had read, and then I quickly realized that it was a book that I had started reading and abandoned because I didn't really like it, even though I ended up really liking the show.
Mm-hmm. Now, I haven't tried to read this book. You did read a section. And
how did you feel about the section? I did actually think, because I liked the show so much, I thought maybe I'll give this book another try. Because, sometimes if you just push through a certain part of a book or something, you'll reach a point where either you get used to the narrative style and it no longer annoys you, or the book improves, or whatever. Surely your audience has had this experience with books before where if you try again and you just try a little harder, maybe you end up liking the book. So I actually got the book again after watching the show. Mm-hmm. I got excited. I was like, I'm giving this book another try. And I've abandoned it for a second time. But before abandoning it, I did read you a passage to try to explain to you why I was abandoning it and what were your impressions of that passage.
It didn't make me want to know more about the book, I guess. It didn't seem like it might be for me.
Now, to be fair, this passage was in, I believe, the first chapter of the book or something, so I only made it through, I can be very precise here because I was reading this on the Kindle, I only made it through 17% of the book, so it could have improved, and perhaps had I pushed on, I would have, when I rounded the bin to 20% or something, maybe I would have started liking the book.
But, what adjectives would you use to describe the writing style?
I felt like it was... I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be able to just pick some adjectives. Let me just describe it. This is an experience I've had with several books. I think this is a common experience that readers encounter. And it's not always a dooming experience. Because there are books that I have read and, gotten through and even ended up enjoying that I felt suffered from this to some degree or another. But it's the feeling when you're reading something that the writer tried overly hard to be literary, but their talent wasn't up to this. It's like a misfire where, because there are some writers who write in a fashion that is very literary. Whatever you want to feel like that means. I have an idea in my mind of what that means, and hopefully it's an idea that's shared by people so we can understand what we're talking about here. I feel like there are some writers that are very intelligent and obviously probably, put themselves into their work as a craft in a certain way that belies their intelligence and also a certain capacity, maybe, or a certain pretentiousness. But I'm of the mind that you can forgive a lot of pretentiousness if it's earned. Or perhaps I would say, it's not real. Is it pretentious if the person really just is that smart? And, they're, stringing together sentences that could be pretentious, but it doesn't chafe you in the same way because it really is smart and you really do feel dazzled and amazed. But then there's other writing that tries to do that, and it falls short somehow, and so you end up just feeling annoyed by the attempt at being kind of high-hat literary, when in fact maybe the writer should have just told the story in a simpler fashion.
Using a lot of $10 words.
Yeah, and not just word choice, although that can be part of it, but I mean the way that the sentence flows, as though you're telling a story, and there's a feeling sometimes that you can really easily imagine that someone wrote this for, their, university, writing workshop, and, and they were ooh, they were trying to be intellectual and trying to write really well, but not everyone can write in a way that's, superior writing. I don't think you necessarily have to be a good writer to actually write a great book or to tell a great story. It can help, obviously. But I don't think it's necessary, and I think it's a mistake to maybe try to be something that you're not. Now, to be fair, it sounds like I'm really attacking this author here, and I'm not totally trying to come off that way, because I do think that people can grow into something. I believe this was this author's first work that they've, had published, and I definitely think that people can kind of grow into their style, and I'm not saying that this author hasn't grown into their style, either further along in the book that I didn't read, or, in their future writings.
Really, we'll never know unless we just actually read some of this author's work.
But I guess my point is, I'm not saying this writer is terrible. I'm just saying that I feel, to me, there was a little bit of a misfire. The way that the prose were flowing was agitating to me. It felt like they were being long-winded and trying to be artsy about the way that they were narrating, when I would have appreciated if they had just stuck to the point a little more, because their artsiness wasn't really feeling like good art to me, I guess, to make my point. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. So it was the author's first book, did not finish it, tried again, could not, but a second time.
Yeah, so we've got 2 misfires. I'm probably not going to try a third time unless someone that I feel has a really good grip on, I really truly respect their opinion, comes to me and says, I too was chafed by this at first, but then it improved and I ended up liking it. If someone was to come to me and say that, I would say, alright, I'm giving it a third try. But until that happens, I think it's pretty much over for me in this book.
Will you read another book from this author?
It's not very likely. But life is long, hopefully. And if I have the pleasure of living for many more years, I wouldn't rule it out.
You look forward to being, long-lived and bored enough to finally...
Yeah, I mean, the hope is that I'll one day be an old woman with, a lot of free time. Because, right now I feel like I'm not the busiest person, but I do feel like my time is a little bit at a premium as far as, reading for pleasure.
We have 2 small children.
Exactly. So I'm saying, there are people that are a lot busier than me, but at the same time I don't really have all the time in the world to read for pleasure. So I do feel...
Any pleasure reading I'm doing is their pleasure.
Yeah, so I do feel a little bit more licensed to just kind of abandon ship if a book isn't working out for me, because otherwise I'm wasting my precious time when I could be reading a book that I'd be enjoying more. So I guess the feeling that I have now, but I hope that I live into another part of my life where I'm an old woman who has time to read for hours by the windowsill or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so does that answer your question? About will I read another book by this author? I can't say conclusively. It's not looking great right now, though.
Yes. But anyway, this has been adapted for the small screen. The Starz Network.
Yes, which I was not really familiar with adaptations done by Starz.
Thing yet, have we?
No, we didn't. I feel like you almost said it, and then you started asking me a question, and we got lost.
But now people are enticed. They want to know, what are we talking about?
We're talking about Sweet Bitter.
Sweet Bitter, yes.
Which, there are issues with the name that we can get into later. But anyway, we were saying that it's...
Starz Network.
Starz, which I'm not super familiar with. We honestly don't have cable. And even when we did have cable, I don't think that we had Starz, or maybe if we did have Starz, I just never got around to watching it.
I thought we had it at some point, because we saw that Party Down show.
Okay, yes, there was one window of time where I think we had a package that came with a lot of channels, but I don't think I ever watched other things on there. Like, my impression of Starz was always that, and this was an impression formed many years ago, and probably the landscape of what's happening on cable TV is different than it is now. My impression was always that their thing was that they had some, like, fairly popular movies that they would be showing, usually. Like, if you wanted to see, like, a popular new release, it could be airing tonight on Starz. And now I think that is not probably a big draw for anyone, because, I mean, don't most people want to just see what they want to see when they want to see it? Or is anybody actually just hoping that something they want to see will randomly come on?
I mean, I think there is a thing about, like, choice overload, and, I mean, if I was flipping through the channels as a kid, and I saw that Die Hard 4 or Speed was on HBO...
You would have been excited.
I would have, and I probably would still feel that way. And I know I can probably watch those movies anytime I want through streaming services or otherwise, DVDs, whatever. But
so you're saying that there is a certain pleasure in not having not having to. Well, actually, this comes back to something you were saying today about how happier people consider themselves to be lucky. Mm-hmm. There's a feeling of good luck. Like, I remember back when I had a TV that I would, like, flip through the channels, and then, you know, you discover that something you want to see is on. There's a feeling that you've experienced some good luck.
Yes.
There's also a feeling of anticipation that also, as we know, being able to look forward to and anticipate something does increase people's happiness. There is anticipation if you know that, like, the movie you want to see is coming on tonight, and you can, like, wait for it to come on, and you're like, yes, it's coming at 8. So yeah, I guess I agree with you. There is something to be said for channels that show movies. I'm just saying that I think the current media consumption landscape probably has shifted away from channels trying to entice people by being like, these blockbusters will be showing.
Maybe.
And more by... I guess what I was leading towards is that I think that it seems to me that more and more channels are relying on generating their own original content to draw people to their channel specifically. Because that's something that their channel can offer that no other channel has.
Yes.
Like, no other channel is offering this show, only Starz.
Rights. That's how, Netflix.
Yes.
Game of Thrones on HBO.
I think that's more the model that everyone has kind of leaned into. And the
they
only
still
reason...
show movies, though, on HBO.
Yeah, of course. But I'm just saying, I think that the original content is a big part of it.
Yes,
like, didn't you say that HBO planned for a dip in their subscribers after Game of Thrones ended? Because they knew that that was, like, a big draw for a lot of people, and that then people would be kind of, But anyway, the only reason that we were able to see this is that it was streaming on Amazon Prime for a limited window of time, I believe, because the new season has recently started airing on Starz. So they kind of were streaming it to, entice people to add the Starz package onto their Prime subscription or something.
I would consider doing that for a month just to, like, knock out the season.
I mean, it would be easy to do. We knocked out the first season in, was it 2 nights?
Yeah, I think what we should do, though, is we should wait until they release all the episodes. And then we should run through it like we did with the first season.
Yeah.
Then we'll actually get everything. Because, like, the mistake is signing up for the streaming service.
And then you only get to see one episode and then...
Well, you're still waiting for the next one to come out because you're still on the weekly schedule.
Yeah, wait until all 6 of them. Or I don't know if this season is just going to be 6 as well. Because that was another thing which you said, how British of them. There were only 6 episodes.
In the first season?
Yes.
Is there 6 episodes in the second season?
That's what I'm saying, is that I don't know how many episodes are going to... I don't know, because I don't know if it's the kind of thing where they only did 6 episodes because they didn't know if they were just going to have to scrap this project and they didn't want to, like, invest too much, or if it was, like, how British of them, they're just doing these tiny little seasons.
I like, you've said, and we just watched the show Fleabag as well, so we've talked about this again recently, but the seasons of British TV shows are generally 6 or 7, usually 6, sometimes 7 a season. A maximum usually of 2, maybe 3 seasons. I usually see only 2. Mm-hmm. And then you get your Christmas specials if you're lucky. But other than that, that's it. Like, spaced, The Office.
And it's difficult because I think it's both joyous and heartbreaking. Joyous in the sense that you don't waste time with filler episodes just so that there's more and more and more episodes.
All filler, no filler.
Yeah, each episode is, pretty well crafted. It's tight. It's good. It's like this episode is important to the show. It's not just like a throwaway. But it's heartbreaking when you love something and then there's so little of it and then it ends and it just never comes back. If you love an American show, you might, have the good luck of loving that show for like a decade. Like, some shows go on.
Some shows that
it's always the shows that should be taken away that last for like 11 seasons. But still, I'm saying if you love one of those shows that goes for 11 seasons, that could be 11 good. That's a long time of your life.
I don't know. That's diminishing returns, though.
True. I mean, usually by the 11th season, things have gone terribly wrong. But
in the long run, it will age better. The British example.
It will, but I'm still heartbroken over Fleabag, though.
Yes, I know, but people
it's a recent hurt that I'm feeling wrong.
But 20 years from now, people are still going to discover that show,
and they're still going to get their hearts broken at the end.
But they'll still know that they got between 7 and 8 hours of quality programming.
But they will still wish that there could just be maybe one more season.
Anticipation makes the heart grow fonder.
It's not anticipation if it's probably never going to happen.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. Anyway, back to this show, not Fleabag. But anyway, it's, a truncated number of shows, but it's only part of this plot of the book.
True.
What percentage of the book is the plot?
I'm thinking not a lot because
33%.
I cannot give you a percentage like that. I will say, I didn't read the book, Rob, so I can't say.
Yeah, but you read 17%.
But here's what I will tell you.
What part of your 17% was on the screen?
Here's what I'll tell you. In the book, it's broken into seasons. Like, I think the book starts in autumn. Or no, it might start in summer and then it ends in, like, the spring or something. So the book obviously spans a whole year, whereas I believe this season that we just watched was a single week. I believe, and I didn't figure that out at first when I was watching. So it wasn't made incredibly clear that it was only spanning a week. Up until about the end, I kind of figured that out. That, it's only been a week. When I thought it had maybe been like a couple weeks or something. So they didn't, like, hammer it in. Like, it wasn't like each episode was titled, like, Tuesday or, Wednesday or whatever. It just, you figure out, wait, it's just been a couple days while this is all happening. And I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. So, 6 is almost 7, right? So, it is almost like just a days in the week kind of thing, right? Episodes do span...
So, yeah, some episodes, she goes to sleep
something.
And then she wakes up and it's the next morning or whatever. So it's not like a exact each episode, but basically each episode is a day of the week. Like, basically through that season, I believe, is just basically a week.
I'd say that's, like, my main criticism of the show, and I enjoy the show a lot, but I think that, like you said, you watched the first season, and you didn't feel like it was just a week. It felt like more than a week, because a lot happens, obviously, in this week.
And they didn't really make it clear. At a certain point...
They made it clear-ish.
But I guess I'm used to there being more time between episodes in most shows, so you kind of assume that maybe a day or two has gone by.
But they do play with time a little bit, too, because at the beginning of that one episode, she's, like, walking home and, like, throwing up, and then they show you how she got there.
Well, I believe they did that a couple times, didn't they? Where the beginning of the show, I think that was, like, kind of their stylistic thing, where the beginning of the show is a flash forward and the rest of the show is a flashback, or however you want to say that.
Yes.
So you see something, and then the rest of the show kind of shows you how the person got to that point, but then it continues on a little bit past that point that you already saw.
Mm-hmm. So, we should probably... I don't think we've even said what this story is about.
We've not. I mean, I feel like...
We've really backed into this here.
I'm letting you lead this show.
I know.
So, you know.
I'm not setting it up enough for people.
Yeah, I can describe what the show is about if that would help you.
Just 30 seconds, because we don't want to give away too much.
I would say 2 things about this show that I think give a pretty good entry to the type of story, and then we can discuss more details after this. The 2 things I'm going to say, thing number 1, it's a very typical premise of young person, in this case it's young woman, leaves home to move to New York City as kind of a desire to jumpstart her life, be adventurous, do something different than stay in her, smaller, less exciting hometown or whatever. Which, I mean, that's like a very typical story. I mean, how many different stories kind of start that way?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's like not very original. And then the second thing that I will say to give people an idea of what this show is about is that it's about her getting a job as a waitress at like a pretty nice, kind of high class, I think, well-regarded restaurant in the city.
Mm-hmm. And she is kind of aimless.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't even, I think she just kind of moves to the city, and she kind of figures she'll get a job waiting, just because, like, she doesn't have another career path lined up. And she's not there, like, it's not like she actually wants to be a writer, or she actually wants to be an artist, or she actually wants to be an actress or anything. She's literally just kind of like, I'm going to move here and, like, get a job.
Yeah.
And then she gets very, very quickly sucked into, like, the world of, like, working in the restaurant. It's very unfamiliar to her. Like, she doesn't really have any experience, so she doesn't really know anything about, like, what it's like to work at a restaurant. I think she had worked at, like, a small coffee shop previously or something, but nothing like an actual, like, culinary restaurant experience. And she's I would say she's kind of enchanted by the lifestyle, both of, like, learning about food and learning about wine, and also of, like, the partying and, like, stuff that comes with, like, the people who work there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's very much, like, she seems very, like, she didn't know much about this before, and she's just kind of, like, taken by it. Like, she's very excited and interested.
Yeah. And that's, as you said, that's a storyline that could be very boring and not well done.
Mm-hmm.
But I was engrossed in the story, so I think that's a credit to it. Like, people think, it's easy to make an exciting situation fun to watch. There's inherent things. It's, on its surface, woman moves to city, works at restaurant, BFD, like...
But I think that's what makes it interesting. You're right.
Yeah, it's mundane, but it's engaging. Yeah,
like, it's not a story about someone to whom something unusual is happening. It's a story about someone to whom something somewhat typical is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's interesting in the way that it's told. And I also think perhaps I like the show more than the book, because I think the details translate better to film, in that I really like seeing, like, it's one thing, I've read some really good books about food, but I think you have to be a really good food writer to write about food in a way that's really nice. But it's easier maybe to show food. Or maybe not, I won't say easier. I will say it's a different set of skills to show food.
Mm-hmm.
And to show wine versus to describe it. Those are 2 different experiences.
Hmm.
And so that's interesting. I mean, I think if you're a fan of food and of wine, it's an interesting show for you. Whether you're kind of coming from the end of you don't know much about food and wine and it's exciting, or you know a little bit about it and then it's interesting to see this person that doesn't know anything about it sort of encountering it for the first time. Either way, I think that's an interesting kind of experience in the show.
But the naivete of the protagonist allows you to join her in the naivete in a non-threatening way.
Yes, I think that's
because
very true.
The protagonist is... It has to be okay for them in the end, right? I mean, otherwise, why are we watching this? You know what I mean? Like, we hope it'll turn out good for this person. Mm-hmm. So we're rooting for them in a certain way. And in that way, we can enter this world that we're, like, unfamiliar with but curious about.
Yeah, and I would say a mix. I would say we're a mix of unfamiliar and familiar. I mean, neither of us have ever worked in, like, a restaurant. We've worked in, like... I've worked in a coffee shop. I mean, much like the protagonist, I've worked in a coffee shop. I've not worked in a restaurant. I would say that I feel like I know more about food and wine than she does.
Mm-hmm. I will have you know, I worked at a pizza place in Mitchell, Indiana when I was 15 for an entire month.
I don't think that's the same as working at, like, a food restaurant. Like, I would say
that wasn't food.
No, but I would say, like, I don't know a lot about wine, but I think, just between having lived in wine country and, trying to, like, educate myself a little bit, I feel like I know a little bit more than her about wine. And I feel like, as a person who, like, she doesn't personally cook or know or care about food. You know what I mean? Until she gets into this experience. And I'm a person that, like, enjoys cooking as a hobby and also has at least experienced food through both, eating a variety of foods and also reading about, I've read a lot of food writing by writers who do a really good job of writing about food. So I would say I do think I come into it knowing a little bit more than her about that aspect of the situation.
Yes. And, it is kind of a terrifying world, the industrial kitchen.
Well, I don't think the industrial kitchen is so terrifying. To me, like, being a waitress would be terrifying. But that's because I don't enjoy working with people.
Part of the job to me.
Really? Because I think I would be fine with the rest of it. It's just the fact that I have to, like, encounter...
Washing dishes and slicing your hand and...
I've washed dishes and sliced my hand. I mean, that's totally, like... I
would much rather deal with people than deal with that.
I don't know. I mean, washing dishes is the kind of thing...
I would like to work at the front of the house. If I have to work at a restaurant,
I think you usually have to start in the back and work your way up.
No, everyone has to start as a dishwasher. I understand.
Honestly, though, washing dishes to me is the kind of thing that I always thought I would hate before doing it. But, like, there's a certain satisfaction in cleaning things. And I always, like... enjoy, like, do it, like, with, like, an industrial dishwasher type of situation, and, like...
Okay, yes, an industrial Hobart.
You still have to wash them before you put them in, or you're not doing it right.
Okay, well, then I don't like it.
Okay, but, I mean, you can wear gloves. I would say that's the kind of thing that I would think would gross me out, but I've found in my experiences that I'm actually fine with that, because, for two reasons, and this brings me back to why I would be a terrible waitress. Reason number one, which is not about being a terrible waitress, just about me in general... I actually really like cleaning things. I like when things become clean. And so there's a certain satisfaction in contributing to that. Reason number two, if you're actually dishwashing and you have, like, a lot of dishes coming in, you can just totally focus on that. And that allows you to not have to then be also focusing on customers because you're really just, like, doing dishes. And this is why I would be a terrible waitress, because... I would prefer to be in the back washing dishes than be, like, chatting with, like, a customer. Also, I am terrible at multitasking. Like, I am great at focusing on one job. I hate trying to, like, divide myself between different jobs. And that's the thing about, like, waiting. Like, we're talking about, like, you're not just taking people's orders. There's all this side work that you have to do. And I think I would be fine at, like, doing all the work, but, like, I hate having to, like, split my attention. Like, I much prefer to be able to focus on something. Mm. And this is why I would be a terrible waitress.
Okay. But our protagonist is not even an employee. She is...
Well, she's just training. Like, she's going to train, and then if she passes the training, she can become an employee. And so the week that we're following her is her week of training leading up to the evaluation, whether or not she gets to, like, continue being a waitress there.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I mean, she's not great at her job.
No.
And I think she could do better. Like, and I say that as someone that, like, admits that I personally have. So, like, I just admitted that I'm not great at, like, multitasking and better at focusing. I feel like she just doesn't even understand the nature of, like, certain things needing to be accomplished within a certain time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very agitating to me, because I have been in a position of trying to train workers where it's like they just literally don't understand that certain things need to get done within a certain time frame.
It's always funny when you're, like, identifying with the side characters more than the protagonists sometimes.
Yeah, you know, there's definitely those moments there. 'Cause, I mean, she's definitely a very flawed character. Although I think she's redeeming in the sense that she means well, and she is very cute, and that takes people far, I think. Like, she's, like, very cute. Like, she has, like, a very cute look, and she has, like, very cute bangs.
Mm-hmm.
And she has, like, you know, a developing romance that's, like, you kind of want to see where this is going to go.
Again, that's, like, less than a week, and kabam, like, already, like...
Well, I mean, first of all, and this goes back to what we were saying about her not being a very good worker, she pretty much immediately hooks up with the guy who's, like, training her at the restaurant.
Yes.
And here's what it is. It's not even so much that she's not a good worker. She's not very good at thinking ahead about what the consequences of what she's going to do are going to be. Like, see, because I would never hook up with somebody who's training me in a job, because I would be thinking, if this, like, doesn't work out or gets weird, this is going to, like, compromise my job.
Yes. I am interested, though, from a writer's perspective, of how they're able to make characters who push your buttons like that.
Yes, well, to be fair, a good story is about someone who follows the rule of improv where they say yes rather than no, and that's probably why, like, a lot of my life is pretty mundane compared to, like, a novel.
You say no more than...
I say no constantly. But, like, I'm saying, like, I think a good story is where, you know, the characters present it with an option.
Mostly to the animals and children.
Yes. Yes, I constantly am saying no to toddlers, and also dogs, and sometimes cats. But like, I acknowledge that, you know, it's good. It's better in a story. Like, if you're inside of a novel, and you have the opportunity to, like, hook up with someone, it's going to be much more interesting if you say yes to that than if you say no.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she hooks up with her supervisor, but that's not even the guy that she's interested in.
Right, exactly.
She just kind of...
This is just a side thing.
Well, I think she just kind of hooks up with him just because he, like, comes on to her, and she's just kind of like, whatever. But she's really into the, like, sort of more mysterious, obviously very troubled bartender at her workplace, who has a sort of unclearly defined, possibly kind of sick relationship with the head waitress. Like, it's unclear if their relationship is, like, brother-sister, or if there's, like, a sexual component. Like, they're not, to be clear, they're not a brother and sister. They're, like, neighbors, but then maybe he was adopted by her family or something after his parents died.
I thought, before you told me otherwise, that he was her brother.
Well, okay, when we first are presented with the characters, he shows up at work late, and the character that he may have this whatever relationship with has, like, saved him a plate, and she refers to him as, like, my love. But, I mean, so you kind of, I think that you're meant in that moment to think that they are, like, dating.
Mm.
And then later, our protagonist walks into the locker room, and they're having an argument while also getting dressed. So the presumption is that maybe, I don't know, maybe they just, like, banged on, like, the ratty couch in, like, the locker room, and now they're, like, fighting and getting dressed. Or at least that they're intimate partners who, like, dress in front of each other. Like, it looks as though she's walked in on them, like, after something's occurred. And so the presumption that both you and she make is that they are a couple of some sort. Mm-hmm. But then when she asked them about it, because she makes a reference to it, like, as though it's, like, obvious, and then they're, like, correcting her. They're like, oh, no, we're not together. We just grew up together. We were neighbors. And then it later comes out that after his parents died, he moved in with her family, and she's older than him. And so she kind of says that she raised him. But there's still a very weird dynamic between them that kind of seems like maybe there's been some kind of a sexual component to their relationship. Whether that's been, just subtext or if something has happened between them in the past is unclear.
Yeah, it's very nebulous.
And it's very disturbing because, I mean, we said that this is the guy she's interested in, but she's also sort of strangely drawn to the woman of this, I'll call them a couple, they're not really a couple, whatever they are.
Who was it that told her that she should not consider that one woman a friend?
The guy that she was the guy who was training her, who she also then,
Now, granted, he has his reasons for saying that, I'm sure.
Although, what are his reasons? I don't think he would be trying to hurt her by that.
No, but maybe steer her away from her and, in a way, the other guy.
Maybe, but I also think that woman is dangerous, so I think he was giving her good advice.
No, I think he might be onto something, but...
I mean, because to be clear...
his own motives for saying that.
This woman we're talking about is very pretentious. She is charming to a certain extent if you are drawn to pretentiousness, which I think a lot of people are. I mean, don't you agree that a lot of people feel like if somebody sort of presents themselves as, like, somebody knows a lot, but also presents themselves as someone who's knowledgeable, not just about things, because, like, this woman, to be fair, is knowledgeable about, like, wine and stuff, and that's cool, but she also just sort of presents herself as, like, she knows about art, and she has such good taste in clothes and music, and everything is so curated and whatever, and I think a lot of people are very taken in by that. I hate... I know, but that's one of my favorite things about you, is that you're, like, the least pretentious person ever.
But I'm not anti-intellectual. I'm not somebody that doesn't appreciate when people know things. I like, it's not... If you actually have it, you don't have to show it.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
You let me know that you... Like
putting on airs.
In The Godfather, does Michael Corleone ever yell? Hardly ever. But he has real power. The boss doesn't have to yell. You know what I mean? Yeah, no,
I agree. But that's what I'm saying. Like, no, it's not about being anti-intellectual. Like, I
if you
deeply appreciate intellect. Yes. I am off-put by people that just try... And this is what kind of bringing back to what we were saying before about how there are certain things that if they're done right are amazing, but if they're done wrong, they just kind of chafe you. And that's with people as well as with writing. A real intellectual writer can write really intellectual sentences, and I will appreciate them, versus a pretentious writer, or in this case, a pretentious person who just chafes me a little bit with their pretentiousness.
Like, show me what you know. I don't want to hear about what you know.
Yeah, and don't make it into, like, a whole thing.
I don't want your soliloquy on why... Yeah, exactly.
And that brings me to another thing I wanted to talk about, like, because we were talking about the name of the show is Sweet Bitter. And that seems to be drawn from this scene that I felt was annoying and unnecessary, where she's having a drink after work with the woman we've just been discussing, the pretentious woman that may be nebulously involved with the guy she's into. They're having a drink, and the woman is trying to educate her about wine, and she's talking about her palate, and she's, like, talking about, like, bitter, salty, sour, sweet. And it's like, And that was supposed to be, I think, a pivotal scene, kind of, in a way, because, I mean, that scene lasted for, 5 minutes? And then later, she's, walking home, and she's repeating to herself, salty, bitter, sweet, sour, whatever. And I thought that was ridiculous, because it's don't you learn in elementary school that your tongue tastes like bitter, salty, sour, and sweet? That's not a real education of the palate. It would have been different if, in passing, the woman had been taste this wine, what do you taste? Yeah, you'll taste certain flavors in the front, certain in the back, blah, 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 whatever. That's, actual, tasting of wine. But just the way that was done, didn't that feel kind of ridiculous to you?
Yes. Also, I think this show has a thing about salt. Mm-hmm. Because there was the scene, of course, where what's his name pulls her.
Where the guy that she's interested in, that maybe involved with this woman who gives her the bitter, salty, sour, sweet, whatever talk. That guy, when he gives her the oysters,
mm-hmm.
And
it's all salt.
She just says salt. Although I felt, though, in a way that when she said salt, that was just a cop out because she was on the spot and she had to answer, and well, because she had that flash, when she had the oyster, and I guess she'd never had one before, and then she had that flash where she was, the ocean, and having sex with him, and, she imagined herself, raking her nails down his back, and then she just kind of, he's what do you taste?
I mean, that's what I see every time I have one of those.
But I feel like she didn't, she couldn't actually say, I imagined having sex with you and the ocean and, flying in an airplane. So I think she just kind of, salt was, the easiest way to, say an answer. Yeah. So I felt like that was more of an answer of panic, but you're
salt
right.
Life.
Exactly. But you're right that there was a little bit of a obsession with salt, because then there was that whole thing about the salt shakers.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
See? I felt like they really hammered that point home.
Yeah, she's supposed to fill the salt shakers and wipe them down, and she doesn't, and going back to her not being good at her side work, and
all these flavors, and you choose to be salty.
Yeah, is she supposed to be salt of, all the flavors?
Salt of the earth? I don't know, there's a lot of implications.
Yeah, I mean, this is
she's
maybe
from Ohio.
Maybe it's supposed to mean something?
I don't know. Symbolic, probably. Maybe not. Maybe accidentally. But,
Well, and then later, when she does a tequila shot with the guy she's into, then when she has the lime, she's sour, which is the stupidest observation you could possibly make about a lime. But, maybe he is supposed to be sour and she's supposed to be salt in this universe.
But they didn't have limes back in Ohio.
Apparently not, because she'd never realized that limes are sour before. Or she'd never tried to name the taste of the lime. She'd had the lime before, but never thought to name the taste. It occurred to her for the first time that limes are in fact sour. We're making this show sound like we hate it. I actually enjoyed watching this.
No, I had a fun time watching it.
Yeah. It wasn't all bad.
It invites picking apart.
Yes, and I enjoy picking things apart, so let's continue. I'm just saying, for the record, I didn't hate this show. I just think there was a lot to get.
I enjoyed this show. That's the only reason I wanted to talk about it, because I liked it.
Yeah. What did you think of her friend at the restaurant, her Russian friend?
What was his name?
Sasha.
What is her name, by the way? Do we ever figure
that out?
Well,
actually, yes, we do figure it out. Okay, that was another thing that I didn't realize at first for a couple episodes, and then I think we talked about this towards the end, when I was like, what is her name even? And I felt like, because it's happened to me before where I'm watching a show and somehow I've just not caught the name of a character, and it's like...
Well, I didn't know if it was like Fight Club where it's just like Jack and the narrator or whatever.
Well, I think that, and there's an explanation for this embedded in the story, and I'll explain this. Okay. They don't say her name until the very final episode. Mm-hmm. Her name is Tess. Mm. They don't say that until the final episode. Each of the characters that she interacts with, either they don't say her name or they name her themselves. Because, the guy we were talking about a second ago, Sasha, her Russian friend, calls her baby monster. And that pretentious, her pretentious head waitress friend, whatever, calls her, little one or something like that. And everybody that references her just kind of calls her something. I think there's another bartender that calls her Skipper or Skip or something, like Barbie's little sister. So they never say her name, and she never makes it clear in the narration until the very end when she actually, I mean, this is spoiler alert.
Hasn't this whole thing been a spoiler alert?
I suppose so. Spoiler alert! She gets hired at the restaurant, so she gets her, her stripes. She gets her, striped shirt that she can, do the waitressing in.
I mean, the story has to continue.
Yes, yeah, we know that there's a second season, but when she is presented with that, the person giving it to her does say her name for the first time ever instead of calling her, and they've previously always called her something. And I believe that's meant to be meaningful, not just in that everybody has given her kind of their own name. I think it's, a reference to the fact that she doesn't really, like you said, she doesn't really know who she is or what she's doing. Like, she's kind of aimless. And also a reference to the fact that when she first starts at the restaurant, Pretentious Woman gives her a lecture about how if she works hard and manages to get this job, could actually, become someone, but right now she just doesn't know if she's going to do it or something. Mm-hmm. So I think the idea is that somehow she's actually been given an opportunity to become someone by, getting to waitress at the restaurant, which I think is a little bit of an oversell of, I do think that doing something in an intense service job, I do think it can be very intense, and it can lead to a lot of, experiences and stuff. But I think it's a little bit, to go back to the word pretentious again, to be this job will make you into someone. This is your chance or something. But I think that was kind of the point of, they don't use her name until she gets the shirt and is hired, and then it's now suddenly we're calling you Tess. Before you were just Baby Monster. You know?
Interesting. But, I don't know, maybe it could make it into someone. It's a high-end restaurant, right?
Yes, but as far as we've seen, I mean, here's what we've seen happens to people who work here long term. I think the idea is that hopefully you have something else you're trying to do and eventually you leave to actually do the other thing. You're trying to be an artist, or you're trying to, be an actress, or you're trying to, you're going to school and one day you're going to graduate and then get a job. The people that are actually doing this just as their career, it seems like a sad end. I mean, we're presented with, there is a woman who's an alumni of the restaurant who comes back, and she's in what appears to be possibly an abusive relationship, and she's unhappy and wants to leave, and also she has an eating disorder.
But so she used to work at the restaurant, and the guy she married was a regular?
Yes. But that's kind of the best you can hope for. If this is all you're doing is working at the restaurant, the best you could hope for is that you marry someone and they take you away from the restaurant. Now she's a rich New York housewife or something, and obviously it's not going well for her. So there's that, and we see someone else who hooks up with someone in upper management and then gets transferred away and has a breakdown and breaks some glasses. So we're not given a great picture of this is making you into someone in the future. It's more this is just a moment in time.
I'm interested in the second season.
Oh, so am I. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen. Mostly to try to figure out, what is the deal with the weird man and woman that she's, drawn to. And why do you think... Let me ask you some questions. Why do you think she's so drawn to either of them?
Because they're both trying to attract her, and she doesn't put up much of a fight to anyone that, tries to bring her away. Well,
but, okay, I understand why she's drawn to the guy, because, I mean, in certain lights, he's, fairly hot, and he's, he seems...
You said he's a good light, bad light?
Yes, I did say that. He's definitely good light, bad light. I don't know you know what I mean, though. Some people, some people are hot, all the time.
Seinfeld
yes, I think we all have. But, yeah, he's a good light, bad light. But beyond just how he looks... He seems dangerous and interesting, and, she seems like she's, hoping to be, shaken up a little bit. So, I can see why she's drawn to him. But,
she's also I'm gonna fix him.
I don't know if she wants to fix him. I think she just thinks it'll be fun.
She may end up fixing him whether she wants to or not.
She's not gonna be able to fix him.
Do you think
I think she's just excited because he, seems, so edgy to her. When he, pushes her up against the side of the outdoors, and I don't know, it kind of looked like he was just gonna fuck her in the street there.
I think she needs to stay away from that whole brother, sister, neighbor, best friend.
But my question is, why is she so drawn to that woman? Other than the fact that she's so pretentious, and some people, like we said, are taken in by that. why is she, like, so interested in her? And clearly that woman is, like, deeply troubled.
Well, I mean, you and I have met people that are full of it, and other people apparently have not. And once you meet people that are full of it, you don't need to meet too many more people like that to figure out what the deal is.
I suppose you're right.
The first time you meet somebody at the age of, like, what, 22?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you know, at 22
probably
we hadn't met as many
taken
people
in by a lot of bluster and, you know, like...
Yeah.
I am not impressed with her wine or food knowledge, like, at all. Like, it's like you read one, maybe two,
I also thought it was hilarious
that
that, like, wine book that she's like, I'll lend you this wine book was totally, like, the same wine book that we have. It was just, like, the most, like, randomly typical wine book that, like, exists.
Yes. She's just restated knowledge that she's acquired from, yeah, exactly, like, a handful of books. And that's, like, supposed to be impressive about wine. But
I'm just saying, like... Also, why is... We can call her Tess, I guess, although I don't really feel like that's a great name for her, but whatever. Why is our protagonist not more concerned about the dynamic between these two people that she's being drawn to? Because to be clear, I don't think there's any question of her being able to be with both of them. It's very much like...
But is she bi?
No, I don't necessarily think that she wants to, like, hook up with the female character.
She might just do it in the course of events.
I don't think that she's attracted to her in that sense. I think she's just attracted to her, like, she wants her to be, like, a combination of her best friend and, like, her mom or, like, her older sister or something. Like, she's very impressed by her, and she wants her to, like, remake her in her own image.
Yeah.
Like, she thinks that she's amazing and so knowledgeable and so beautiful and just has everything figured out. And that's, like, obviously not true. Like, she's obviously just, like, kind of walking upon a very thin facade of, like, being, like, very much falling apart.
Yes.
But why is she not more alarmed by the creepy brother-sister/lovers vibe of these characters? That's my real question.
She's probably not repulsed by it. I mean, it's interesting.
Yes, it's interesting if you're not trying to hook up with one of them, but I think if I was trying to, like, become involved with someone, but I thought they were having, like, a weird sexual vibe with, like, a sibling-ish character in their life, that would be a turn-off, wouldn't it?
Yes. To me.
And to most people, right?
Yeah, but they haven't made TV shows about most people or books.
True.
I'm saying...
And like we were saying before, I mean, saying yes makes a better story. If she said no to these people because of their weird vibe, we would never get to know what happens.
Exactly. Was there anything we haven't said about the show? We haven't seen the second season yet, so we can't really talk about that,
But, I mean, I'm sure there was more we haven't said. Was there anything that you felt needed to be covered that we've not covered?
No. I think people should watch it, and...
Yeah, I mean, like we said, I mean, we enjoyed this.
Yeah.
And hope to see more. Hopefully. And I think that, I mean, like we said, I believe that the second season is just going to still be drawing from the original story. Which is good in the sense that it's not like now they just have to, like, go off book and make something up. So,
that
hopefully...
seems like it would be a big mistake.
Hopefully the second season will be just as good as the first season. I think it has a good prospect.
Yeah. But it's a world even beyond, I think... I don't know how the book ends, of course, but... I feel like they've created a rich enough world that they could keep it going beyond the confines of the book.
Oh, sure. I just mean that I think that a lot of shows suffer from, you know, movies, if they're based upon a book and then it goes on beyond that material, sometimes it goes in a direction that people that were fans of the original material weren't happy with. That's all I mean. But, I mean, who knows?
But we have not and have no plans
we were actually unhappy with the original material. So
it's only up from here, honestly.
Yes. Yes.
But I was telling you that, like, I thought maybe it's not that the book was a failure. Maybe it was just a wrong format. Maybe it was just supposed to be a TV show the whole time.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense, too. Like, I don't think that... Oh, something else to be said about the book is that I believe that the book is meant to be a thinly veiled memoir of the woman. Like, I believe that the writer of this book, I believe this is really about her, and it's just, like, slightly changed to be, like, fictionalized.
Is her name, like, Bess or something?
No, I don't know, but no, I just mean, like, I know, and I remember reading that she, like, was working at the restaurant and wrote this about her time working at the restaurant and then found a publisher while working at the restaurant, you know what I mean, so. Like, I believe she met the publisher because she was working at a nice restaurant and they, like, ate there. So, you know.
See, but you were saying, how do you...
But I guess...
working here and
at least but that's a difference, at least so far. I don't know what's going to happen to our character in the second season, but that's a difference in that one can presume that the actual writer wanted to be a writer this whole time. Like I was saying, like, you know, you're being a waiter while you're also trying to be a writer or like an actor or whatever, whereas our character so far doesn't seem to have any aspirations beyond just that she wanted to move to New York City and get a job so she could, like, keep living there.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, not really. Did you have anything else you wanted to cover with this?
No. I just think that, you know, it was a sneakily good show, and excited to see more of it, and I think there should be more, like, shows like that are, like, quietly good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Well, it's the kind of show that, from the description, it might not even sound like it could necessarily be good. It's all about the production values, good casting, well done, like... I think the script is, like, well written, like, it feels like, you know what I mean? It's not like, some things it's like something about the dialogue makes you cringe a little bit or you're uncomfortable.
Or the premise is just too much. Like, it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, but this is just, like, what's good about it is how the story is told, not necessarily.
Honestly.
But that's what I'm saying. What's good about it is how the story is told, not the story itself, necessarily.
Right, exactly. Like, less high concept and more... I don't know, storytelling.
Details, yes. Storytelling, the intrigue of getting to know, just, you know, details about characters and people, and, like, an experience that is both unique in certain ways, but also common in other ways.
Join the Rob Burgess Show mailing list. Go to tinyletter.com/The Rob Burgess Show and type in your email address. Then respond to the automatic message. Also, please make sure to comment, follow, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review everywhere the podcast is available, including iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Twitter, Internet Archive, TuneIn, RSS, and now Spotify. The official website for the podcast is www.therobburgessshow.com. You can find out more about me by visiting my website, www.thisburgess.com. If you have something to say, record a voice memo on your smartphone and send it to therobburgessshow@gmail.com. Include voice memo in the subject line of the email. Also, if you want to call or text the show for any reason, the number is 317-674-3547. Until next time.